Pavel Artamonov, once one of the most influential businessmen in the country, had lived in seclusion ever since he lost his wife, Vera, in a terrible car accident. The loss was so painful that he sold part of his assets, withdrew from social events, and entrusted his business to managers. He rarely left his enormous mansion, built for a happy life that ended far too soon. On that winter day, he was driving aimlessly on the outskirts of the city. Everything around was covered in gray snow. The air smelled of soot and sorrow. Pavel noticed a girl of about 8 years old, sitting on a concrete slab near a pharmacy. She was shivering, curled into a ball, hugging a tattered backpack that seemed to contain her whole life. His heart faltered, and to his own surprise, he stopped the car. He offered her hot cocoa and food, which he had picked up from a nearby cafe. The girl took the cup distrustfully, looked at him, and said a phrase that froze the blood in his veins. "Your wife is still alive." First he thought he misheard. How could she know? A joke, a hallucination, a figment of imagination born of grief. But the girl continued, without looking away. "She has a scar on her cheek. She calls to you in her sleep. All the time. I heard her. She said that you don't believe, but you must know, she's alive." Pavel tried to find out how she knew Vera. The girl, who introduced herself as Liza, said she had lived in an orphanage on the outskirts of the city, where recently there had been a woman resembling the one he described. The woman was silent, with burned scars on her face, woke up screaming in terror, and constantly repeated his name. She wore a necklace with a moon-shaped pendant, the very same one Pavel had once given Vera for their anniversary. That pendant was unique, custom-made. He could not believe it. After 2 years of despair and resignation, a dangerous, burning hope flared in his heart. He showed the girl an old photo of Vera. Liza nodded firmly. It was her. The next day, Pavel contacted his former bodyguard and trusted aide, Alexei. Together, they began searching for the orphanage Liza spoke of. But when they arrived, the woman known as Marta was no longer there. She had been transferred to a private clinic under an anonymous request. No documents, no records, no photographs. Pavel noticed something strange. Marta's medical file had disappeared from the archives. The orphanage's cameras had been out of order, and the staff answered evasively. One nurse secretly admitted that the woman had been taken away at night without warning, crying and begging to be left there. Pavel showed Liza the burned remains of Vera's pendant, which he had kept all this time. The girl shook her head and pulled out an identical one from her backpack, but intact. "The woman with the scar gave it to me," she said. "She told me, give this to Pavel if you ever see him. He will understand." This was no delusion. It was evidence. The first crack in the tombstone of lies under which someone had tried to bury the truth. Pavel could no longer stop. He felt something greater lay behind it all. If Vera was alive, then who was buried in her grave? And above all, why had she not been allowed to return home? He could not erase from his mind the image of Vera, lost somewhere under another name and another life. He felt guilty for having believed in her death so quickly, not noticing inconsistencies. He knew he had to set things right, even if it meant unearthing the dirtiest secrets of his own past. He hired the best private detectives, specialists in identification, data recovery, and forensic medicine. Their task was simple: find out who had really died in that crash and where the woman called Marta had disappeared to. The first step was filing an official request for the exhumation of the body buried under the name of Vera Artamonova. The procedure was complicated and required court approval, but money and connections did their job. While waiting, Pavel focused on Liza. She now lived in his house and gradually began to trust him. One night, sitting before the fireplace with a cup of hot tea, she confessed that Marta often told her stories about a world beyond the orphanage walls, about a garden with red roses, and about a man with warm hands who called her my heart. The description exactly matched how Vera used to describe their home and him. Liza could not have invented this. Then came a breakthrough. One of the detectives reported that at the orphanage from which Marta was taken, there was indeed a record of a nighttime patient removal, but all data about the vehicle and escorts had been erased. However, a former guard, already dismissed, gave them the number of a driver who allegedly did transport jobs for closed institutions. Pavel met the man in a frozen garage outside the city. At first, he kept silent, but when shown Vera's photo, he flinched. "I drove her. She didn't speak, only cried. We were escorted by men in medical uniforms, but with weapons under their jackets. I was told not to ask questions. I took her to a building outside the city, an old boarding house converted into a rehabilitation center. This information was key. Pavel sent a man with a drone to film the site. It was surrounded by high fences and cameras. This was no ordinary center. It looked more like a private prison. While he gathered intel and prepared a team to infiltrate, the exhumation results arrived. The body buried as Vera was not hers. The DNA did not match. It was another woman, a stranger. Shock, fear, anger all merged into one. Someone had deliberately swapped the body. Someone wanted him to believe in her death. Someone wanted her to disappear. Pavel reviewed old security footage from his mansion on the day before the accident. Something strange emerged. The alarm system had been disabled for exactly 27 minutes, precisely when Vera went to the store and never returned. The service report blamed a system error, but the engineer who signed it had been found dead 2 years ago. The official cause, suicide. Meanwhile, Liza vanished. She had gone out for a walk with a new guard Pavel had hired, and never returned. Panic swept through the household, but 2 days later she was found in the basement of an abandoned warehouse. Frightened but alive. She said the man who lured her there knew Vera. He told her, "If Pavel keeps digging, she'll be next." Liza brought back a strange object. A scratched metal pendant. Pavel recognized it immediately. He had once commissioned such a pendant for Vera, with a hidden message engraved inside. "Find your way home, even if the whole world is against you." He opened it. The message was there. It was real. She was still fighting. From that moment, Pavel had no doubts, no fear. Only one goal remained: to find Vera. At any cost. The driver's information led him to a private clinic in Romania, allegedly an elite facility for patients with severe psychological trauma and amnesia. Pavel infiltrated under the guise of a patient with forged documents, but the clinic was a fortress. Iron gates, armed guards, no cell service, and silence from the staff. He managed to plant one of his allies inside, a doctor named Andrei, whom he had once worked with on charity projects. Days later, Andrei contacted him, sending a photograph of a patient named Maria, a woman with a half-burned face, deep scars, and memory loss. But in her eyes there was something familiar. Pavel did not hesitate. It was her. Through Andrei they obtained a DNA sample. Pavel provided Vera's old hairbrush from their home. The analysis confirmed it. Maria was Vera Artemanova. Margin of error: less than 0.1%. He could not believe it. All this time she had been alive, living like a ghost under another name in another country, not knowing who she was. He wanted to take her immediately, but Andrei warned, "The clinic isn't just a medical facility. It's a closed site, financed through offshore accounts. They keep people whose disappearance benefits someone." That same night, while Pavel planned her escape, the clinic was attacked. Men in black masks stormed in, tied up the guards, and took several patients, including Vera. Security footage intercepted by Andrei showed one of the attackers, Pavel's former bodyguard, fired 3 years ago, Oleg Surov. He was loyal not to Pavel, but to his ex-partner Sergei Voronov. Pavel was furious. This was no coincidence, it was personal. Voronov had long sought a share in his business. After Vera's death, he unexpectedly gained control of several strategic assets, thanks to documents signed while Pavel was in deep depression. He had exploited his vulnerability to expand his influence. Vera must have found out. Perhaps that's why they tried to eliminate her. But when she survived, they hid her under another name. And now, as she began to remember, Voronov tried again to erase her forever. Pavel wasted no time. He activated contacts in Interpol, hired international experts in surveillance, and soon discovered where she might have been taken. One of the vehicles from the attack belonged to a shell company linked to an old estate in the Bulgarian mountains. He flew there with a small team. They found only an empty villa, but in the basement Pavel discovered an old rag doll with a crookedly stitched heart on its chest. He knew this doll. Vera had made it herself and kept it in their bedroom. She had been there. She had left him a sign. One of the villa's security cameras was damaged, but Pavel managed to recover frames. In them, Voronov himself appeared. He held Vera's hand, said something, then turned sharply away as she screamed. The footage cut off. Pavel understood. He had one last chance and he could not fail. When he returned to Moscow, he was a different man. His face was hard, his movements swift, his voice icy. All that remained in him was will. He had lost peace, time, and nearly the love of his life. But now, knowing Vera was alive and in Voronov's hands, he was unpredictable and dangerous. He initiated an internal audit of all companies and assets that Voronov had accessed after Vera's death. Evidence began forming a grim picture. Fraud, shell deals, witness intimidation, falsified documents. Vera's death had opened Voronov's path to billion-dollar contracts. Her return could destroy everything. Pavel realized Vera was not just his love. She was the key to dismantling the criminal scheme. He publicly announced a reward of 10 million rubles for any information about her whereabouts. The media exploded. Billionaire searches for wife thought to be dead. The story went viral. Calls came in from all over the country, though most were false. During this time, Liza became his main source of inspiration and faith. She believed in Vera as strongly as he did. She studied faces, recalled voices, described the man who had taken the woman from the clinic. Her description matched Oleg Surov. Through a contact in the FSB, Pavel obtained satellite images of the Bulgarian estate area. One of the cars spotted there crossed the border and headed toward Kaliningrad. The trail ended near an old manor owned by a fictitious charity. Pavel and his security team moved in immediately. The operation took place at night. Dogs, weapons, cameras, everything was there. But they were ready. Breaking inside, they found Vera in a second-floor room. Her face was thin, her hands trembling. The scar still marked her cheek. But when she saw Pavel, her eyes filled with tears. She recognized him. In that moment, nothing else mattered. No enemies, no fear, no revenge. Only her. Only the face he had searched for so many years. Only her whisper. I knew you would come. But the joy did not last. Oleg Surov tried to escape. A firefight broke out. One of Pavel's guards was wounded, but Surov was captured. Under pressure, he confessed. Vera had indeed survived. Voronov learned of it through his contact in emergency services and decided to hide her, faking her death to seize control of Pavel's corporation. When Vera began regaining memories, they moved her to the private clinic, then abducted her again to prevent exposure. Surov gave up the location of another site where documents proving Voronov's financial crimes were kept. A week later, Voronov was arrested. The trial was loud. Society was shocked. Pavel publicly declared that his entire empire would be reformed. Vera was officially rehabilitated as his wife and as a victim. Months later, Vera recovered and dedicated herself to charity, especially helping homeless girls like Liza. She and Pavel officially adopted her. The girl gained not just a home, she found a family. The story ended one evening in a house filled with silence and warmth. Vera sat by the fireplace. Liza was drawing. Pavel read aloud. Outside, the first snow was falling. The house, once a symbol of loss, had become a home of return and new life. And on the wall, in a frame, hung the very pendant with the engraving, "Find your way home, even if the whole world is against you."